I love it whenever we get the chance or opportunity to cover industry news, especially industry magazines or like websites that focus on like one specific thing. So we've covered a story not that too long ago from the Lodestar before, and they are sort of a UK logistics focused magazine. You know, their entire strapline is, you know, making sense of logistics. And one of the big problems, of course, at the moment, especially with Brexit, is logistics. You know, getting one thing to another place, shockingly, I know, costs you money. But there's so many people out there who don't seem to, especially when we talk about trade, to take the idea of logistics into account. Because yeah, you've got sort of how long it takes to, you know, make a product or put all that stuff together, and you know how much that might that thing might cost. But then you've got to get it to market, or you've got to get it to your customer from the factory. So that's where the logistics comes into it. That's where you've got to go, okay, we need lorries coming at this time. You know, it takes X amount of time to pack and load. Then that lorry sets off to its, you know, its destination, and that could be going again, you know, across the channel. Could be going to a port. That lorry might get unloaded onto the ship, on that stuff onto the ship. That ship might go to another port. That gets unloaded. So again, all that takes time and that takes money. As we've talked about before, that can increase the price of a product or increase the end price to the consumer or even the buyer of that particular product. And it can make sometimes you uncompetitive just on your price to sort of send that product. And we've said, I don't know how many countless times, one of the big things that is going to make UK companies really uncompetitive is the fact that their price to send stuff is going to be a lot more than it used to be, purely because we are no longer in the single market and customs union. So unless you have a really good product, and bear in mind there are companies in Germany, France, Spain, all these companies in the single market customs union. What's the difference if you've got a product that is exactly the same that your buyer may be able to get, and it's exactly the same type of product that they can get in Europe for cheaper? Because businesses will do that. And this is where British businesses will lose out. So without further ado, we're going to go cover this story, because I think this is quite interesting to cover on, again, the logistics front, because, again, you sort of get a different, more in-depth view with sort of an industry-focused magazine. So before we go jumping into that, please do remember to hit that like, share, and again, subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help support the channel that way. And of course, down below, there is a link to my the YouTube subscription page. That's it. Yes, completely forgot what it was then. But yes, anyway, on with this. Like I say, this comes from the Lodestar, and the title of "The UK is still regarded as the Wild West as importers avoid customs declarations." Because again, customs declarations have been moved on, not for a first time, not for a second time, not for, you know, third time's the charm, for a fourth time. The UK's new Goods Vehicle Movement Service, or the GVMS, continues to be a headache for the UK border officials, with concerns mounting that hundreds, if not thousands, of shipments are bypassing the system's checks and balances. Sources at Customs Forwarding and Haulage Associations said it was, quote, an open secret that the GVMS does not function, and loopholes will continue to be exploited until the import safety and security declarations are introduced. There could be 10 loads on a vehicle without a single import declaration, and no one would know unless it was stopped, one customs broker told the Lodestar. If safety and security declarations are imposed on the 1st of July as scheduled, this will give the border force at least a fighting chance to see what needs to be stopped and sanction arrivals that arrive pre-lodged with declarations, he added. However, as a Lodestar reported yesterday on the possibility of up to, again, a 3-year delay for the introduction of planned cytoplanetary checks due to take effect from July. And again, the Cabinet Office spokesperson merely noted that the issue was, quote, under careful review. Without these checks, one forwarder suggested that Dover would maintain its post-Brexit status as the, quote, Wild West of European supply chains. Hauliers always look for shortcuts, and they believe they know best and don't appreciate actions that have repercussions. Dover was described as the Wild West, and GVMS the sheriff that is brought in to try and bring it into order, said the forwarder. We are seeing some hauliers still reliant on the entry in declarant's record or the EDI shortcut when it comes to GVMS entries. I believe there are some hauliers just tricking the empty vehicle option for GB inbound. Part of that problem is, of course, a goods movement reference can be finalized via the GVMS, and entry of just not one movement or employer reference number, running, again, the risk that hauliers could avoid declaring all shipments on an onboard a truck. So imagine that. A haulier could just go, I've got an empty truck. When in reality, they've got a full load. We've talked about the potential problem of Northern Ireland becoming a state-sanctioned smuggler state before in the past. I think we maybe have reached that now with the UK. One haulier, though, challenged the notion that they were, quote, seeking shortcuts, and said that the officials at HMRC had been aware of the loophole since 2020. And the haulier said that a more pressing problem was how the GVMS would work with the cytoplanetary checks were introduced, noting that the multiple SNS and the MNERs will become mandatory for EU to GB good movements, but it will also be another party rather than the haulier responsible for it. The logistics service providers will be making these declarations, and the haulier will not have to have the MNRS in their system and therefore won't be able to use the GVMS API. If the MNRS are issued for the consignment level rather than the manifest level, as the EU member states, including Belgium, France, and the Netherlands, there will be hundreds, if not possibly thousands, of MNR per truck. And these will need to be entered one by one into the GVMS because there is no option to bulk upload. But once the MRS has been declared to the GVMR can actually be finalized. The spokesperson for the HMRC told the Lodestar that, quote, HMRC has a strong track record of tackling all kinds of avoidance, evasion, and non-compliance, and we will continue to employ an end-to-end approach to try and tackling these customs risks. But this was contested by another forwarder who said, we were encouraged to report to the HMRC when these events happened and got not very many enthusiastic response to it. Chaos. Absolute chaos. And we're wondering why we're seeing all these lines down in Kent. And remember, the more they bring these checks in, meaning that they then have to stop every vehicle and show their documentation, chaos. And not only that, you saw what was said there, that you can't bulk upload to the system. You've got to upload it one by one. Well, think about this. How much time in an office do you actually have to spend doing that when you could be spent doing other things? Again, all this paperwork, Brexit was meant to be about cutting all this paperwork and getting rid of it. But no, this has added so much more paperwork to companies who before didn't even have to do this type of paperwork. Companies, the small and medium-sized companies who do not have the personnel, the expertise, or can afford that expertise. That is going to cause huge problems for these companies. And as we said before, some businesses are just going to give up entirely. And then how much of your business is exporting to the EU worth to your business? 20%, 30%, 40%? We've heard as high as 60%. Of course, that was to do with fishing, but you know, that's businesses losing money. And how long can that continue? I don't think it can continue, to be honest, very much longer. And especially the more of these rules that come in, the harder it then becomes to trade with our biggest, closest market. As we've said before, trade gravity is a thing. Countries always trade with their closest neighbors first before anyone else. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a monetization link called Buy Me Coffee. We can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.